Okay. So we're here to discuss a little bit the human mind, according to the Buddhist view, what it is and how it functions, and how to, more than anything, how to transform it. You know, we're not set in stone. As Lama Zopa says, we can mold our mind into any shape we like. So let's discuss that. So we think we're going to do that, so we can take some tools from all this and use, you know, to do that exact job for our own benefit, because we all want to be happy and don't want to suffer. And so then we can be of use to others as well. Thinking like that. Thinking like that. Well, as we know, if we've listened to any of the Buddhist teachings, you know, he talks about the positive qualities inside us, which we can really develop to a huge degree, which I think is quite surprising to us, because I think we think we're set in stone. We feel we're set in stone. This is who I am. I'm angry. I'm a depressed person. I'm a jealous person. I'm an intelligent person, you know. And especially these days with all the Western labels. I'm autistic person. I'm OCD person. I'm an ADHD person. We're very concrete in our labels, you know. And then we paint the whole of us with those brushes. And that's kind of tragic. They loom large in our mind, I think, these labels. So the Buddhist approach, as you might know, is that the mind is infinitely flexible. We're not set in stone. There's no characteristic in our mind that can't be changed. I mean, some are harder than others, for sure, depending on the habits. But basically, we're programmed with habits, you know. And we all know, if you just say the word habit, we know habits can change. We know we can develop new habits. So we think of our characteristics as habits. That makes it more spacious, you know. Your OCD is just a habit. Your ADHD is just a habit. Your anger is just a habit. Your depression is a habit. You know, but we've also got the positive ones, and we can habituate those. That's the idea. So we think, why should we do this? What's the point? What's the purpose of it? You know, well, guess what? It's because I'm sick of suffering and I want happiness. Speaking very simply, you know, because the Buddha's point is that those very unhappy characteristics themselves, which we think are the result of outside circumstances, with this innocent victim to whom bad things happen, and so therefore you can't help it. But the Buddhist approach is that before we look at anything else, by looking into our mind and seeing these unhappy habits, they are the source of our suffering. And then they cause us to cause even more suffering, because they inform the way, as Lama Zopa puts it, they inform the way the world out there appears back to us. So there's, as we know from the Buddhist teachings, there's ways of describing these neurotic, unhappy, I-based, fear-based, delusional, distressing, disturbing states of mind, which are not at the core of our being, which we can change. And then the positive ones, speaking very simply, you know, almost seems too simple to think this way, but this is the Buddhist analysis. So we have to familiarize ourselves with that if we like the idea, not just believe it, you know. And so then we can get these, we look at the essential unhappy states of mind, as we talk a lot. One of them that really runs the show is called attachment. You know, it's multifaceted. But as a driving force, it's like it's anxious, fearful, unstable, kind of fragile. And it's an assumption deep in our bones, an assumption that only the good things must happen. It's desperate for the good things to happen. Nice smell, nice taste, nice sound, nice feeling, nice sight, nice experience, second by second by second. And the more intense it is, the more fragile we are, and then the more freaked out. In the millisecond, it doesn't get what it wants. So that the attachment is driving. It's very primordial. It's not even overt sometimes. Sometimes it can be very overt, craving for chocolate cake, craving for that new girlfriend. The thoughts, thinking of it all the time. That's a very overt way attachment works. But in a more kind of implicit way, it's just this drive, you know, hard to kind of contact. But when it doesn't get what it wants, that's the arising of aversion. So in a simpler sense, when attachment is there, it's looking for something to go towards, to be excited, you know, oh, wow, that's delicious, and you go towards it. And the aversion is, oh my God, go away. It's kind of can't cope. So we're running between these two all the time. So one way of approaching how to practice dealing with these, and it demands ever more constant awareness of our mind, which has to grow. Skill at this is dependent upon our ability to notice what's happening in our mind, ever more subtly. The approach is that when the bad thing happens, like just the simplest examples, stubbing your toe, a sound that annoys you, someone not listening to you properly, not getting what you want, the red light instead of the green light. I'm talking baby events, ordinary daily events that we don't pay attention to. But every time they arise, aversion arises. And if you've got attachment, it's guaranteed that aversion will arise. And if you have aversion, it's guaranteed you've got attachment. So until you're a highly realized being, they're going to be there in you to one degree or another. And all the other dramas are rooted in these two, you know, like arrogance, low self-esteem, all the rest, extreme anxiety, and all the other dramas, you know. So catching this process second by second. So a really powerful way to start to work with the mind is to greet the problem. That's the best way to put it. Greet the problem instead of wanting to push it away. Greet the problem instead of this instinctive aversion to it. You know, anger is simply aversion, and aversion is go away. I don't want that. And then another level of practice, and this is really hard to see, but when we talk about it, we can see it, is that when you get the bad thing, like the pain in the knee, for example, actually, one way of approaching it is that attachment is there all the time. So attachment is this constant hunger to get only the nice things, have only nice experiences, and then try to manipulate the world to make it so anxiously. And then the millisecond you get the pain in the knee, let's say, then you say aversion arises, but another way to put it is, so at the beginning, attachment is constantly wanting only the nice experience. And then when the unnice experience happens, attachment shifts to then wanting to be free of it. So it's constantly attachment. And that's really a very powerful way we suffer. When you've got the pain in the knee, all we're thinking about is how to get free of it. All we're thinking about is anticipating being free of it. That's attachment as well. So wanting the nice thing, manipulating to get it, getting it, and then desperately trying to hold on to it. And then when it goes, you know, craving to be free of the unhappiness. So attachment literally is there constantly. It's a way of saying it. And it's very powerful. We can see this. So the practice is to greet the problem instead. Because what happens is, every time aversion arises to something, stubbing the toe, the red light, the annoying sound, it builds up. It's like you're practicing being angry. It's like you're practicing having aversion. So it builds up. It doesn't just go in one ear and out the other. It builds up. It builds up. We all know whatever we do, we develop a habit. If you keep making a cake, you'll keep getting better at the habit. If you keep playing the piano, you'll get better at the habit. If you keep getting angry, you'll get better at the habit. So what we're trying to do here is stop developing the habit to be attached, to be angry, and these things. It's very practical. But because we think, oh, this is who I am, it's set in stone, we don't think of it as habituating ourselves, you know. So it's not because, so the reason to sort of greet the problem is to become some kind of prove you're some brave, strong person, oh, I can handle it. And it's not to be sort of like all stoical to prove something. No, it's to learn to be happy. You know, when people often use, people who are practicing Buddhism talk about living in the moment. You know, this is really what it means, you know. Each moment that arises, that's what's happening. That's it. The red light, that's what's happening. You know, person smiling at you, that's what's happening. Pain in the knee, that's what it is. So the practice is, instead of attachment to the nice thing and clinging to it and wanting not to be free of it, and then when the bad things happen, freaking out and being attached to being free of it, which is so complicated, which is so conceptual, which is so kind of dramatic. It seems so simple, but it is a profound practice. And when you really advance at this, you know, I mean, when I had to write the obituary of Lama Zopa Rinpoche a few months ago, he passed away in April, you might know, and they asked me to write the obituary. And when you're describing the way he is in his life and interviewing people, he is what they call a bodhisattva, which means a person who's done this job, who's, apart from anything else, but has done this job of eradicating this constant process of attachment, aversion, you know. So that means, so for example, a vivid example was when he had a stroke. His auntie Rinpoche had a stroke. And I interviewed Roger, who is his main attendant with him all the time. And it was very blunt and very direct and very shocking to hear. As Roger said, Rinpoche didn't change in the slightest. He didn't change in the slightest. He never said a word about it. He never asked questions about it. In the hospital, I think initially he said, or I interpreted, the doctors and nurses thought he was mentally ill. Because normally people talk about it, they strain it, they're anxious, they're worried, what's the method, how long it'll last, there's tears, there's dramas. He didn't show anything. In fact, look at photos of him. There's one photo of him. He looked radiant, looked delighted, looked happy. This is just too weird for our minds. We don't comprehend this. We think he's mentally ill. That's like a mentally ill person. That's not normal behavior, we would say. Or from the Buddhist perspective, that's normal. We're the ones who are mentally ill by being neurotic, but we think neurotic is normal. So from the Buddhist perspective, that's like almost like the baseline in Buddhism, joking, using that term, baseline is like perfection. Baseline is Buddhahood. When there's no ego, no delusions, no nonsense, you know. That's hard for us in an ordinary materialist view of the mind, because we assume a normal person has anger, attachment, fears, jealousy, depression. That's our normal. Well, that's what Buddha means by suffering. So when you read about someone like that, it's hard to kind of get your head around how that's possible. That's because he's practiced. So if you think of it for no other reason, who do you think benefits from that? He does. His mind is stable. His mind is content. His mind is not getting freaked out about it, anxious about it, aversion to it, panicked, depressed, worried, fearful, freaking out. None of that is there. That's very hard for us to comprehend as a possibility. But this is exactly the Buddhist approach. So we practice, have to start somewhere. You know, I like to say, don't wait to get a stroke to do that. Don't wait to be like one of my friends on death row who has to start to practice dealing with the things you can't stand if you can't change it. You know, start now with stubbing the toe, start now with the annoying sound, start now with the baby events. But that means the basis for the ability to do this is the ability to see our minds. And 99% of the time, we're not even observing our minds. We just take this whole process as just natural. We say, well, of course I'm angry. I just stubbed my toe. We say that as the most natural thing on the planet, as if somehow you don't have a choice. And it's shocking to think you've got a choice. But that's the point. And so one of the first things to see then, that stubbing the toe is a physical event. It definitely triggers unpleasant feelings in the toe. Fact. But then there's the mental state of mind called aversion, which is an interpretation of it, and they are two events. This is very shocking to hear. We assume they're the same thing. Well, of course I'm happy. My boyfriend was kind to me. You're in front of a divine girl and you're totally in love with this girl. So, well, of course I'm excited. Look how beautiful she is. Of course I'm excited and anticipating a delicious cake, because we give all the power to the outside object. And then we assume these little kind of victims of it and have no choice. We don't think we have a choice but to eat the cake. We don't think we have a choice but to crave the girl and jump on her. We don't think it's out. We think the cake is doing it to us. I always quote this example. It sounds very shocking, and it's on a feminist issue. This is attachment. When in fact I was a feminist back in, before I was a Buddhist, in the 70s in London, 60s and 70s in London. I remember vividly. I mentioned this story. One of my policies was, and people think I'm shocking, but never mind. I mean, any man who said anything to me, I would punch him in the nose or something, or scream at him on the street. This is my policy. I decided to take it in my own hands. So this fellow, I remember in London, this old guy said something about my breasts. I had very nice breasts. I mean, I had a nice chest, And People get arrested if you say something these days, isn't it? But I remember this old fellow said something about my breasts. And I went up to him and I shouted and abused him. And he was nearly in tears. He was so upset. And he said, if you don't want me to say anything, why do you look like that? Now, this is not feminist. That's attachment. So in other words, a person like that, a man who has so much attachment to a female shape, the assumption in his mind is, this is just natural. How dare these girls walk along the street making me feel? I mean, that was the Catholic Church. It was a sin. We girls, it was my sin if you got excited by looking at me. That's how heavy duty it is, you know. That was the same as the Muslims, isn't it? It's the girls' fault. So we're not allowed to look cute because poor boys can't control themselves. I mean, it's pretty embarrassing to think about it. It's very evident, isn't it? Really. I mean, it's nakedly embarrassingly evident that it's male, a heterosexual male's invention, you know? Do you understand? It's fascinating. I'll never forget that. I mean, at the time I was a feminist, but that's not the point I'm making here. It's blaming the object. You can hear it, isn't it? Quite shocking. I'll never forget. And he was really upset. He was in tears, practically in tears. And he was so upset. But if you don't want me to say anything, why do you look like that? Do you understand? I mean, it's incredible. Do you remember that awful time for those poor Indian boys in Delhi who raped that girl on the bus and stuck sticks up her vagina and she died and totally destroyed? Remember that story or not? And these boys, they made a big fuss about it. And these innocent boys, you know, who just brought up this way, it's in their minds, and they talked like that about this girl. But I mean, they were so naive, they put themselves in the problem because they're just naive, because that's just the view. Well, what does she expect? She's on a bus at 9 o'clock at night on her own. Do you understand? That's the assumption behind all these heavy-duty male laws in some religions, perfectly frankly. But that's to do with attachment. The person who's got that attachment, for whatever, whether it's the cake or the heroin or the girl, you blame the object, because when the object is there, it drags you to it, and you don't think you've got a choice. That's how ego means victim. Are you hearing what I'm saying? It's very fascinating. We are total victims. We're like lemmings, pulled from pillar to post by the outside world, blaming the outside world. So we blame the outside world for making me angry, but we blame the outside girl for making me happy as well. I mean, of course I'm happy my boyfriend was kind to me, like as if we have no choice. That's how that's how terrible we are. That's how suffering we are. Complete victims of the external world, you know, and that's attachment and aversion. This is the essence of practice. You know? Learn to be in control. Learn to know I'm in charge. Learn to know it's just a cake or a girl. Okay, habits are strong. And this is the tragedy. That's profoundly how habits are strong. So, you know, the way that Buddhism would describe, for example, the process. This is bringing in the view of karma, which of course is very powerful in the Buddhist view. All the Buddhist teachings, the worldview of Buddhism is absolutely based on this assumption of consciousness being not physical, consciousness as individual beings, minds going back and back and back and back and back into previous lives. There's no concept of a creator in Buddhism. And you come programmed, and also the view that everything you think and do and say programs your mind. So you come into this life programmed with your habits. So you know why we have very strong attraction to certain things. We just think, oh, well, it's just where we're made, it's just good luck, it's bad luck, can't help it. So whether it's you want to torture somebody or you're a kind person, we just think you're born this way. And we think, well, maybe mummy caused it. But if mummy and daddy are torturers, then we don't know why the kid wants to torture. If mummy and dad are torturers and the kid becomes a torturer, oh, now we know why, you know. But it doesn't work like that. We can see so many parents have torturing children, but they're not torturers themselves, or musicians or anything else, you know. You bring your own habits with you, and that habit plays an incredibly powerful role. So if you've got to come into this life with strong attachment to, say, you know, sexual activity, since a little boy, you know, I mean, I always, again, tell this story. My friend, Panos, a Greek guy, he gave me permission to always tell this story. I said, you have my permission. He told me when he was 6 years old, walking down the street in Athens with his Greek Orthodox mummy, and he sees a poster on a cinema, you know, a cinema of a lady half naked. And he says, Mummy, what? And he's a little piping little voice. Mummy, why is my penis standing up? He said. And then the cinema lady heard him, and the poor mother was mortified. And the cinema lady said, oh, he'll be a lady killer. But I mean, why do you think at 6 years old his thing stands up? Because he's got an imprint, attraction to sex. So why do you think at the same time, this little boy who spent his life being a fisherman, this is a kind of view, there he is, he meets fishing at the age of 5, And instantaneously, this is the way that they describe it even in the 12 links of dependent arising, depending on the intensity of your past habit, when you meet the object again in this life, 5 or 95, whatever, it instantaneously, it's like the extent of your habit to do it. So with Panos, the extent of his past habit of sexual activity, and it would have been to female shapes, was equal to the extent of his pleasure at the age of 6 and all his little hormones doing what they do automatically, given his past habit. Well, this is a past habit. So then pleasure would have arisen, and then attachment kicks in and makes it look delicious, and then he starts to preoccupy with girls at the age of 6. I mean, he told me he saved up, I'm going to talk to the fisherman in a minute, but he saved up his pocket money, he said, and his first thing he bought when he got pocket money at the age of 12 was a prostitute. He really enjoyed going to prostitutes, you know, not complaining, I'm just telling you. Habit. So this fisherman, he didn't know he liked to kill until he met the fish. And then it looked delicious to him. It triggered intense pleasure. I mean, even one guy I read about, a writer, who said when he first went trout fishing, he said it was like a cosmic experience, meaning intense pleasure. We call it intense pleasure, sexual pleasure, but don't get confused about it. It's just intense pleasure, that's all. I mean, there's a guy in prison in death row I know in Kentucky. He, as my friend Mitchell, who's a Buddhist, says about him, Robina, he thinks of torture all the time. There's a guy, you know, you think of these people, there's a guy I read about years ago in America who spent his life torturing people, and he talked about, he confessed in the prison, in court, about every one of his murders and his tortures, and he said, I got sexual pleasure from it. All that means is intense pleasure. Sexual is a misnomer, it's just pleasure, dependent upon his habit. So of course, if you've got strong habit to eat cake, and this, I mean, that's the best we can do is, you know, be attached to cake. Thank God we're not attached to killing or raping or torturing, or killing fish for that matter. The habit determines your response to it when you meet it again. So we know so even just chocolate cake. But of course, what happens is because the cake then, due to your habit, you think, and then the other thing is you think about it all the time. One of the signs of attachment is you think about the object all the time. So my friend on death row, he thinks about torture all the time. It's just that habit is in his mind. We can see that. Our best habits are eating too much food, isn't it? We think of food all the time. But can you imagine thinking about torture all the time? Can you imagine thinking about jumping on little girls all the time? Can you imagine about thinking of killing fish all the time? That's one of the functions of attachment. It's conceptual. We think about it all the time. Always craving it, always wanting it, sad to be free of it, wanting it all the time. But again, of course, never satisfied because you just keep wanting it more. That's the tragedy of attachment, and that comes from the karmic habits. That's the Buddhist view. It doesn't come from nowhere. It doesn't come from God. It doesn't come from mummy. It doesn't come from a brain. You bring it with you. So because it's a habit, all the more difficult to change it. This is the job. So that's where it's really powerful to understand the Buddhist analysis of these deluded states of mind, these emotions, as we would call them, that they're underpinned by being conceptual stories deep in the bones of our being from habit. So attachment, this kind of, we feel it at an energetic level, is driven by this conceptual story that is exaggerating the deliciousness of the torture, the deliciousness of the cake, the deliciousness of the girl's shape, the deliciousness of the fishing. Attachment, all the delusions exaggerate, they embellish. They're not accurate assessments. And then we believe them. Bad enough, as Lama Zopa says, that, you know, and I'm extrapolating here, but the fishing, the object, the person, the cake, whatever, bad enough that they appear, in this case, more delicious than they really are. But the worst part is we believe it's true. So one of our most powerful practices, when you're completely obsessed with that person, you know, who isn't your partner, but probably someone else's partner, and you're obsessed day and night thinking about them. They appear divine. You can't change your mind. You can't resist. You go crazy. They appear divine. Then the thing is, don't believe it. The cake, you're trying to give up. The heroin, I mean, it's hard. It's intense. Look how hard habits are. This analysis in the mind that feels like emotion, but is driven by being a conceptual story that we have believed in for so long. It's very rigorous, disciplined inner work, conceptual. Being your own therapist is not just kidding, it's deadly serious. This is a very specific analysis. This is the Buddhist analysis of the mind. And this is what you work, this is what you do with it. You know? And so, of course, the key to success is the extent of our ability to be aware of what the hell is going on in our mind and knowing how to hear these conceptual stories, then how to unpack and unravel. This is our job of being a Buddhist. This is the job. And the practices we do support this. So the girl is looking good. I did have a nice chest. You know. But he just assumed I was there for his benefit. That's what attachment is. Attachment is very, very greedy. Attachment is very pathetic. Attachment is very self-centered. That object is there solely for me. The cake is there for me. That person is there for me. We see them as like an object that belongs to me. Attachment is totally self-centered, totally greedy, totally infantile. Like a child who can't resist, you know. See it, you want to take it. That's attachment. So stopping believing in that karmic vision. It's just your own story that you've been practicing for so long. And now you believe in it. But it's the hardest job we'll ever do. We'll practice them. Any questions, anybody? Any questions? No, nobody. Anyone here? Questions? Is it? Yeah, go, Eileen, sweetheart.
Yeah. I was going to ask a question about meditation.
No,
So,
can you stick on the topic on this? Is it related to this?
yes. In other words, when
What do you
you
mean by meditation? So what do you mean by that? What do you mean? What's the question? The question.
When you sit down, you watch your breath.
That's an example of a meditation. Okay, so what's the question about that?
So it's a struggle not to go with a thought or a story.
That's
or,
right. Of course, that's the point.
It's very difficult.
That's exactly right.
So I take it that the more difficult that is, the more there's attachment, obviously. That the mind is just chewing on something.
The more difficult it is an indication of the intensity of the attachment, yes. Because attachment, as I said, is a multifaceted insofar as the objects we're attached to, but also insofar as it's functioning. So there's the raw level of attachment is just, you know, is when you're thinking of something and wanting it hungrily. That's the grossest, obvious level of attachment. But at a more subtle level, attachment simply is also primordial dissatisfaction. And every second, it's always wanting something more. In other words, being not satisfied gives rise to this grosser level of then what can I get to fill it up? So the feeling of not being satisfied is a function of attachment. Then the conceptualizing what can I get is the function of attachment. So the mind conceptualizing, thinking, all these conceptual thoughts, thinking this and thinking that, and maybe this and maybe that, and if this and if that, and why not that, that's attachment energy. You know, a so-called OCD, that's attachment energy. ADHD, that's attachment energy. All of these are manifestations of the way conceptuality of attachment functions. Yes. So of course, one of the simple benefits of concentration meditation is to train our mind not to follow the thoughts. Of course, it's intensely difficult, but that's the job, to train the mind not to follow the thoughts. That's why you anchor your mind to something simple like the breath. It's training the mind to develop the habit to be, and what comes from that is the habit to be conscious of what the hell is happening in the mind. That's all. And slowly we start to have control over the mind. It's very advanced practice. This is very advanced practice. There's no question. Do you understand, Eileen?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah?
Yeah. It's very hard.
No, exactly, darling. But I think given when we can see how when we see something like an example of this, like say Lama Zopa, he's sort of like the Roger Federer tennis, you know, he's like, so you see the examples of what is possible, then we can have some humility and patience to know we've got way to go, but to know it's possible. If you never saw anybody playing tennis and you just read about it, you'd never have any courage because you just know you're a disaster. But if you see people who've qualified at it, you go, wow, I can become like that. So when I read about and think about or write about Lama Zopa, it gives me the courage to know, okay, I can become like that. These are the very methods that he has practiced. So we have a bit of humility and patience rather than annoyed with ourselves because we're not good enough at it, you know. Do you understand?
Yes, thank you.
It definitely is long term, there's no question on it.
Yeah.
Hello, Victoria. Hello, sweetheart. Talk to me.
Oh, thank you for teaching. Regarding the, it makes total sense to me that that OCD is a manifestation of attachment very clearly. My question around that is, what is the karma of something like OCD that's obnoxious only to ourselves?
What do you mean, sweetheart? Say it a bit different. Ask the question a different way.
What is the cause? What is the cause of that level of attachment that has no impact on someone other than ourselves?
Oh, I mean, that's a very common way attachment works. It's, for a lot of us, it doesn't always follow that we're attached to something outside. It's very common. It's just a habit. It's very specific habits of, you know, I mean, it's like, you see, I think, okay, it's interesting. If we look at, you know, what is it? OCD, obsessive compulsive. So what would be, give me an example. I know there's a multitude of methods of habits, but give me an example of what of a thing that a person would do who has OCD. Give me an example.
Check an apartment door, say, check that a home door is locked.
Okay, good. I got it. Okay. But also, you know, also I remember watching on Netflix the documentary on David Beckham.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant soccer player. So they all joke about him because he's impeccable with all his clothing in the house. It's all impeccable and clean. Everything's perfect. He has his suits all lined up for the next 7 days. Everything has to be the right shape in the wardrobe. All the hangers hang in the right way. So people say, oh, he's obsessive compulsive, right? Is that an example?
But only if it's intrusive to the way that he lives. If he's fine with it, it's not actually, it's
okay,
not.
Well then, this is interesting because okay, this is very fascinating because if it's obtrusive, I mean, okay, I hear you. But the thing is that very quality though, checking something to make sure it's right, like the front door, that's a really good quality. That's called wisdom. Because when you have to make a cake, you've got to have perfect detail, don't you? You've got to have exactly the right amount of flour. So you've got to have that kind of mind that's in the mind of detail.
Sure.
So then that's a good quality. So by learning to see it's a good quality, then we can start not to chuck the whole quality out. But if it's over, so then I think you add to that, you're never satisfied with the result. That's why you keep checking the door again, because dissatisfaction kicks in. Oh no, I can't have done it right. I've got to do it again. And that's dissatisfaction. So if you know you've checked the door and you move, or you know you've got the right number of eggs, you have to check 7 times, then you have to, but it's still a good quality, but you've got to practice being satisfied with it and training yourself not check the second time. That's the training. So it's not trusting, it's dissatisfaction. Are you hearing me?
Mm-hmm.
So it's another aspect of attachment is dissatisfaction. So in other words, another way to put that one is no matter how good a person gets at music, they keep saying, no, I'm not good enough at it. I'm still not good enough. So it's either, you know, you're not satisfied with the front door checking the first time, so you're dissatisfied, you check again, or you're not satisfied when you got to grade 97 with music, so I better do more. So it's a variation of dissatisfaction. So learning to be satisfied is also one of the practices. So giving up the habit, it's like forcing, like giving up any addiction. You train yourself not to do it. You train yourself not to do it. It's very hard. It terrifies us.
What is the karmic cause of dissatisfaction?
Dissatisfaction is the cause.
Okay.
I mean, this is not meant to be a tricky answer.
Okay.
What's the cause of being good at music is playing good yesterday. And why were you good yesterday? Because you practiced the day before. And then why were you good when you were 7? Because you practiced in a past life. And why were you good then? Because you practiced. It's not a complicated answer. We're wanting a big capital R reason. It's simply habit. It's habit. And that's when it can be liberating to realize we can change the habits. It's habit. Are you seeing what I'm saying?
Very much. Yeah.
Okay, good job. Good.
Thank you.
I mean, that's all karma means is habit. So sometimes we screw up the habits, you know, we just do dumb habits. We overdo the habit of making things good, and we're never satisfied, so we keep trying to make it good again, but still never satisfied. There's a multitude of ways is habituating that functions in the mind. Do you understand? It's pretty primordial, and it's multifaceted. So many manifestations of it. I mean, we give them all the different names in the West, but it all comes down to being this attachment. It is multifaceted. It is complex. There are many manifestations of it. But when you understand this fundamental model in Buddhism, and you can really explain it to yourself. Do you understand?
Thank you.
Good job. Good. Who else? Yes.
For someone like myself who lives a normal life, how can I become into more equanimity with desire? And for example, going to the park, seeing friends. Of course, there's a desire there. How can I check and see if there's attachment leaking, or is this a healthy relationship?
Exactly. That's the difficult thing to see. I mean, it's the different levels of practice in Buddhism. And the very first level is kind of like seeing that seeing that we're driven by the unhappiness, driven by the attachment. It seems to dominate. So, okay, we've got delusions and we have virtuous qualities. So let's say, you and I have a relationship and I've got massive attachment. I'll be neurotic, I'll be needy, I'll be jealous, I'll be angry. I'm also kind of loving, but I've got to kind of get calmed down the first lot so I can really grow the second lot and have a happy relationship with you. So the same with going to the park or having a meal. There's something, I mean, most of us do everything by attachment. Because if one day if I wake up, you're my boyfriend down the road and you ring me and I'm bored today, I'll say, no, I don't want to go to the park. So everything we do or don't do is based on attachment. If I'm all excited, I'll go to the park. If I can't be bothered, I'll say no. So we're just totally self-centered. So you lessen the attachment. So once you sort of the fundamental level, really down to earth, discipline, living in vows, having precepts, being very kind of controlled and disciplined in your practice, learning to see your mind intimately. Then you get to the next level where you can become in the bodhisattva path, the compassion wing, where now you can become more spacious and I can learn to live this relationship with you and not be scared of the attachment and the aversion because I'm harnessing it, and learn to practice kindness and practice patience and enjoy going to the park, but also go to the park if I don't feel like it one day because I want to make you happy. So you're doing things, you're changing your motivation to be more conscious, more virtuous, more other-based rather than just self-centered. You have to learn working with these parts of ourselves and knowing where you're at. So if I'm attached to alcohol, then I'm not going to pretend to try and like alcohol. I'll just keep away from it. But if I'm not that attached to the park, I can afford to go to the park and enjoy it without too much attachment. Do you understand? You've got to know your mind well. And we communicate. You've got the neurotics bits and you've got the positive bits. We have to see the difference. Do you understand? Am I answering?
Because in many ways I feel, okay, I am in equanimity, but I might be attached to, I don't know, something very minuscule. Like, because the shiny ones, I think for someone like myself, it's easy to see.
I understand.
If I have a beautiful girlfriend, I can see,
That's
okay, what am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
But to the oatmeal I make every day.
But what?
Let's say if I make oatmeal every day, okay, and one day I'm out of oatmeal, I might suddenly I got triggered, and there's a dissatisfaction that is not there. Are there any methods for us to routinely examine our habits?
Of course, that's what practice is, though. I mean, that's what practice is. The method. I mean, practicing. You're pointing out a certain problem. That's what happens when you play the piano. Are there methods? Yeah, practicing the right thing, but knowing the methods first. I mean, here we're being it's very casual how I'm talking, but in Buddhism, there's very precise techniques. So when you learn the technique, you learn the looking, you know what to do. You just keep doing it. You just keep learning, keep doing it. So the key technique is, in general, the ability to notice your mind. That needs training. And then once you're able to look at your mind, then on the basis of knowing the theories, you apply those methods. And then you do the analysis and do the deconstructing and do the changing. You're a cognitive behavioral therapist, basically, if you're being a Buddhist. And you just get better and better and better at it. You only learn according to your own pace, You understand? And we're a work in progress. So we have to be delighted with our progress and keep moving. You understand? Okay. Yeah.
I'm a little confused about something.
Yeah.
So I've worked a lot with the realms when it comes to this. The realms.
What do you mean worked a lot with? What do you mean by that?
For me, I've had trouble just sort of squashing attachment through noting Vedana, like I like it, I don't like it, I'm neutral toward it. And for instance, I'm in a relationship, a marriage, it's really complicated, it's messy. And so the way that I work with the realms is I notice patterned thinking. So I notice that I'm oftentimes what I would say in hungry ghost realm, I really want something and I create the conditions such that I will be disappointed, I won't get it. I really want to be vulnerable and I really want to be received, but I'll somehow sabotage that and get disappointed.
So, yeah, I can hear sort of what you said, but can you try and keep it simple?
Yeah,
And don't forget the realms for now, can you just keep ordinary language and ordinary attachment aversion?
yeah,
Just
I guess
simple.
in the simple non-realm way of talking about it, like I just keep opening up to more and more intricate pattern behavior.
I don't know what that means. Can you try and keep it very, I mean, I do, and I can easily interpret it, but just say it in the simplest way you can, with no adornment, and just see we can, what do you mean?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull out ignorance at its root.
Well, if you're a Buddhist, that's what you're trying to do, yeah. Okay,
And I'm confused how to find the root.
oh, okay, that's another whole discussion, like, full stop with the previous thing, in fact, it's a new book. Not just turn the page on a new chapter, that's a complete new book now. So what's your question? How to realize emptiness is what you're asking. So which is your question there?
When it comes to attachment, I guess I'm finding myself drawn to understanding the stories that are driving attachment. I must get this or else that.
I don't understand. I think you're making, no wonder you're complicated. You're making it complicated. Can you just keep talking? I don't understand you. I do, but I want you to keep unpacking it. Keep it simple. What's the problem? Give me a scenario in a relationship where this causes a problem. And I'm not trying to be too personal,
No,
but it'll help understand it. Give me a simple example.
I'm not getting my needs met in the relationship.
Okay, I mean, that's so enormous, I can't believe it. Can you give a simple example? You mean the person doesn't listen to you when you talk? They don't, huh?
Sure, yeah,
Give a simple example.
yeah. I'd like some more one-on-one time with my partner.
Sorry, what?
More quality time with my partner. Couldn't we watch a movie together?
Okay, so stop. So then you're asking what's the problem there? I'll tell you what the problem is. The attachment is the dissatisfaction you're talking about is not being seen and approved of. That's the most primordial attachment there is. It's called all these other names, but basically you in yourself, like the rest of us, join the universe, you in yourself are not content with who you are, and you need this person to spend time with you, which shows you must be worthwhile. So you're needing this person's approval. This is the worst, the most painful attachment in the universe. That's your problem. Join the universe, babe. It's attachment to being seen and heard. The assumption being, I am not enough until she smiles at me. So you've got to look at why, how come you're dissatisfied? How come you're dissatisfied? Not how come, but you are dissatisfied with you. This is more than for sex, more than drugs, more than rock and roll. It's called more quality time. You put this name on top, but it's like 27 layers up. Keep it right down to the root. Basically, we are not satisfied with who we are and need the other person to smile at me. And we think by them doing that, I must be a good person. But even if they do that, they can come and then, if you really got this strong, we all got the strong attachment. It's the worst suffering on the planet. And when it's really severe, this person can spend time 24 hours a day in the bed with you, and you can drink their blood and you still won't be satisfied. We call it more, some people might say more sex. Some people say more quality time. Some people say more meals together, but it's basically feeling the primordial one. You call it, she's not giving me enough. It's not her at all. It's you. She might not be giving you enough. That's another discussion, and that's her problem. But yours, like the rest of us, is I'm not enough as I am this millisecond, and I need her to smile at me. And even though she is probably smiling, and she probably thinks, and this is the pain in most relationships, she probably thinks she's giving you everything she can. But for you, it's not enough because of your attachment to be needed and seen. They say this is called attachment to reputation, and it's like the last one to go. It's the most primordial. It's the closest to ego grasping, the hardest one to see.
Why is shame right there?
What?
Why is shame?
What do you mean by shame?
I don't know.
What do you mean by that?
As you're saying it, I'm like,
Well, you're probably feeling guilty.
shame is right there.
Well, because you're feeling guilty. I'm a bad person.
Yeah.
And that's a symptom of this same attachment. Because this attachment has been there since we're born. All of them are programmed there, but it's the hardest one to see. Because even as you're a tiny baby, your mother's smiling at you. And even as a tiny baby, it's this part of you is being fed, and your mother's smiling, and the view is, oh, I must be okay, she smiles at me. And then you need her to smile again and again and again. And when this attachment is very deep, and it is for all of us, then no matter how much your mother loves you, when you're really serious about this dissatisfaction, that's why so many children think their mother never loved them, they never liked, and she thinks she gave everything on the planet. This is where this is I think the greatest pain in some relationships. The person thinks they're not being seen enough, not being heard enough, not enough quality time, not enough sex, not enough this, and the other person can't believe you think this because they're giving you every inch of their being. And the cause is because we're not satisfied. The person might not be giving you much. That's their problem. So in other words, we have to start verifying ourselves. This is this is the hardest one to see. That's why I use that example with yogis in the mountains who've given up all the obvious attachments, are still thinking of what the people in the village are thinking about. And it's the voice in our head 24 hours a day. We're having conversations with the other person. We're waiting to hear what they think of us. We want them to approve of us. We want them to see us all the time and stroke and approve. And you understand? It's the deepest attachment of all. Since we're born. It's the hardest one to see. And then we built it up in our life. We built it up because we've heard that mummy says you must do this, and daddy says you must do that, and God says this, and he says that. And because we're trying to be seen as a good boy, we're going to do what mummy says and what daddy says and what God says. And when we don't, we feel guilty. It's connected to it completely. Because we're trying to win people's approval. God's, mummies, daddies, and the fucking world's. And then we think when I get approval, I must be a good boy, but we don't get satisfied from it because we have got to think we're a good boy. We have got to approve ourselves. It's easy to say the words, but this is what the practice is. The slowness, but giving up the grosser attachments is the way to get to this one. This is the hardest one. This the source of all our pain. The fact of the matter is, this person might not love you anymore, and they might not be giving you. But that's another discussion. You've got to find that out.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And that's why so many parents, when they're brokenhearted, but I did everything I could. And that's the point. So there's a child who's got a bottomless pit of neediness. And there's a parent who's only capable of giving what they can. And that's the disconnect in most relationships. Because maybe this person can't give more, but when we think they should give us more, but it's never going to work. It's like a nightmare. It's a nightmare of most relationships is this one. Do you understand? And we know as soon as another person's craving something from you, it's like, go away, leave me in peace. It's the best way to drive a person away. Do you understand? What is talking? It's hard. Fucking painful. Excuse me, swearing. It's probably numb. I swear to you. I mean, I'm not trying to be ridiculous. I will say it. I'm not trying to criticize. I don't feel guilty. We choose our lifestyles, you know. Ooh. And this is the downside of it, the painful side. I mean, it's not meant to be critical of anything. One of my sisters, her husband died. They've been together since they're 19, 7 children, 27 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. She's an amazing human being. I adore my sister. She's been an incredible matriarch all her life. Husband is now dead. And still a year later, the pain, she's never known such pain. That's what happens when an attachment object's been there, as well as a love object. But for 70 years, 50, 60 years of a life, it's like 4 limbs have been cut off, you know. And that's the downside. And you can't win, so you've got to learn to deal with this. That's the consequence of having attachment. And life, and loves, and relationships, and babies, and children, and things. If you're a bodhisattva, it's cool. You can have best of both worlds and you won't suffer. But that's what we're aiming for. Do you understand? Slowly, slowly. Yeah.
I still don't understand Buddhism, but it seems from one angle that Buddhists have really deep attachments. They don't want to suffer, they want to be happy, they want to be reincarnated. And so they go through all this effort to get rid of aversion, but it's really going towards something. It's really not, I don't know, it's almost like you would just be agnostic whether they're good things or bad things or anything.
Oh, I see. No, I understand that. And I understand your point exactly. And I think the Buddhist analysis of that statement is that there's an assumption in your question that attachment and liking things are the same, that aversion and simply, they're completely different, or attachment and wanting something. So you can say, if you've got attachment to eating cake, when you don't get it, you'll really suffer. But if you have just enjoy cake, you get great pleasure from it, but it won't be suffering if you don't have it. That's, the Buddha would say, we've got this ability to have incredible joy and fulfillment, which is what really he means by happiness. But if we assume attachment, which is emotional hunger, is normal, then when you're assuming that if you give it up, you become just like a moron, like sort of nothing. No, that's nihilistic, not a bit like that at all. That's not the meaning. The Buddha's view is we can have joy, bliss, contentment, happiness, and not have attachment, and therefore be joyful. No matter what happens, you're able to handle it and be useful to others as well.
And that's not an aversion to suffering.
Can't hear you, darling.
Is that, in Buddhism, often say you want to end suffering, you do this, but.
You want, so what?
You want to end suffering.
Yeah.
You do this, you do all these things. But
Yeah, then.
isn't that fundamental, like we have an aversion to suffering? Why should we care if we suffer or don't?
But
Does that, I don't know, maybe I'm mischaracterizing.
no, I understand. No, I understand your point. Okay, maybe the thing is to say what happiness is. If we say suffering, the opposite is happiness. Would you agree? There's suffering and
Or
there's
you're
happiness.
going towards something.
Pardon?
Yes, absolutely.
Happiness and suffering. Okay, good. So give me what you think you mean though by those two things. Just give me a rough idea. What do you think you mean by happiness and suffering? What do you mean by that roughly? Just roughly.
I think suffering is like the everyday pain of life where you're just.
Give an example.
It seems so fundamental.
No, I know it exactly. That's right. Give an example.
I mean, it's anything from not getting what you want.
Yeah, well, exactly. There you go. Exactly right. Perfect. That's exactly what Buddha's saying. And all he's saying is you can have the best of both worlds. You can stub your toe, but not have a mental breakdown. Your boyfriend will drop dead or leave you, and you'll still be a human and you have a heart, but you'll have enough inner fulfillment. You'll be enough joy within yourself that even if your boyfriend is there or not there, you'll still be happy. It doesn't mean you become some kind of flatlining, nihilistic person, which is the assumption, because we can't imagine happiness without attachment, and we can't imagine suffering without aversion. Well, all the Buddha is saying is you can have those.
But it's not just like a really deep type of.
What, sweetheart?
It's Buddhism isn't just a really deep type of attachment to some really fundamental things.
Attachment. Okay, let's define attachment.
Preference or.
I understand. No, I'll define attachment from the Buddhist perspective. In the Buddhist view of the mind, you've got neurotic, I-based, fear-based, distressing, delusional, disturbing states of mind. And we all know them: attachment, anger, jealousy, depression. You've heard of those. And can you see the pain they cause? And can you see the pain they cause us to harm others? Have you noticed the world? Wars, violence. Where does that come from? Anger, do you think? And anger comes from attachment. So that's what we mean by suffering. First in your own mind, and then the things we do to harm others, and then the things that happen to us. Would you say that's suffering? Would you prefer to be free of that or not? What do you think? What would you think if you had a choice?
Yeah.
Would you like the world to be happy and joyful and not harm each other, and you not harm each other, and people be kind and loving to you?
Yeah.
But okay, so all Buddha's saying is his whole method is a way of getting rid of that. You can't change the world, but within your own self, you can learn to get rid of the rubbish and keep the good.
But that's not aversion.
What is an
That's not
aversion?
aversion.
No, okay. Wanting something, I think I'll walk out the door. If it's attachment, I'm going to bully my way past everybody else and don't give a fuck if I hurt people. But I've got to want to walk out the door to bloody walk out the door. I can't just sit here and go, hope the door comes and opens. I've got to have a thought, I want to walk out the door. Would you agree with that? The thought, I want to walk out the door, is not attachment. It's a reasonable, intelligent thought, given that I'm here and I want to walk the door to go to the station. Attachment to walking out the door is a completely another kettle of fish. That's I-based, self-centered, that will demand people get out of my way and will be upset if you don't let me out the door. That's a completely different experience. Can you hear that difference? You can't.
Level, no.
You can't.
I don't understand why. I don't understand.
So which piece can't you understand? Is it? Okay. I'll give you two examples. Again, I'll give you another two examples. There's you and I go for a chocolate cake, okay? We both have decided our taste buds, based on habit, chocolate cake suits us. Can you see how that's a possibility?
Yes.
We go to chocolate cake, and then carrot cake comes instead. So you'll go, well, I can handle carrot cake, and you'll make the most of it. I'll go, excuse me, I ordered chocolate cake and have a mental breakdown, I refuse to pay the bill. because I've got attachment to chocolate cake and get angry when I don't get it. But you haven't got attachment and you're flexible and you can enjoy carrot cake. Can you hear that difference? Would you think that I've got a more sensible approach or you have got a more sensible approach? Which is a preferable approach to have?
Well, the first one, but that's.
Thank you very much. Stop right there. Then there's your answer. What's wrong? So that does not answer your question?
I don't know if I'm articulating, but I don't understand how Buddhists do anything in the world, like.
Stop talking about Buddhists. This is the method of
It's just
being.
like, why would you have a?
Did you just hear what I said though?
Yeah,
Did you hear my example? Because that doesn't work for your mind. Would you prefer, do you think your approach is a more reasonable one to live your life and navigate your life with that approach? Or do you think mine is a more preferable one?
much more.
I beg your pardon?
Yours is much more practical.
To be angry and upset.
Oh, no, sorry, the other way.
So then, okay, then all I'm telling you is the Buddhist approach is how to become like this and not become like me.
And that's not a aversion in itself.
But if you don't fucking suffer, it can't be aversion. If it's suffering, it's because of aversion. If there's no suffering, you didn't suffer. Suffering means you're mentally flexible, you're relaxed, you change your mind, and you, excuse me swearing, I'm sorry to swear, so rough and rude, I know, I'm so awful. But you're able to shift on a dime and enjoy the carrot cake. That's not aversion, that's not attachment, that's common sense and it's relaxed. That kind of happiness is preferable because you're able to navigate, you're able to deal with what life brings you without losing your mind. That sounds to me pretty reasonable. Are we communicating or not?
I understand what you're saying.
Okay, so where's your problem still? All I'm getting at is if you'd like to be more like what you're suggesting, all I'm suggesting is the simple level, the Buddhist approach is a way is to develop like you, become like that.
Liking itself an aversion to something. I don't want to suffer, Buddhists don't want to suffer. So
I can't hear you, darling.
I don't want to suffer, Buddhists don't want to suffer, so there's.
You don't want to suffer what?
I don't want to suffer, or Buddhists often say they don't want to suffer, so there's an aversion to suffering. So there's like a paradox.
You know, you're saying that and you keep repeating it,
Yes.
but I haven't said it. But you keep
Okay.
saying it as if you believe it's true, but I'm trying to show you it's not like that. But then you don't have to believe me, sweetheart. I'm not trying to prove you to be Buddhist. You don't have to. It's just a method of how to work with the mind. That's all Buddha. You know, it's just this cognitive therapist. All I can tell you again is, if I use that simple example, and you agree that you think it's probably a more reasonable way to be in your life, then Buddhist methods are ways to help you become like that and not be like me. I mean, is that not a sort of a broad, a sort of fairly simple kind of approach? And it's not as if Buddha invented it, it's common sense. I think anybody in their own life, if you're a communist or a Buddhist, would try to find a method to handle your life without losing the plot. That's not aversion, attachment. Attachment and aversion is more suffering. So you can decide, because you're American, that a chocolate cake. If you're an Australian, give an Australian a piece of Vegemite on toast, because they're used to that habit. So then what happens is you then get attached to that. But you can have your Vegemite toast and not be attached to it. You can have your chocolate cake and not be attached to it, but you'll get more, and you'll get more pleasure from it. Even the bonus is more pleasure. You'll be able to enjoy your carrot cake far more than me, because I'm obsessed with it, wrong. I don't, should have been chocolate. I'm not going to eat this cake. I'm not going to pay the bill. There's no, gone. Pleasure's out the door. I don't know, can you get a bit?
Yes.
All right, I'm very pleased. All my swear words. Yes,
There's a question.
good, okay. Go, Paola, talk to me. Yes, Paola.
Excuse me, I think Viviana wanted to.
Well, too
ask
late.
a
I've got you
question
first.
Before.
Don't worry. I've got you first. Talk to me.
Okay. Sometimes, thank you, Venerable Robina. Sometimes the best solution to attachment for me is to run away, disappear, and after a while, aversion rises.
Okay, so what's the question, Paola? Tell me the question.
The question is, the appropriate way, the method to face attachment would be to see my mind, to catch the moment, to greet the problem. But how can I do it? I cannot always do it. I know there is a way, but I cannot.
No, listen, Paola, if you go to Roger Federer and he will explain to you the theory of how to do a backhand. Of course, you can't do it immediately. You practice, dear. Be humble and just practice. This one is a theory. You have to learn the theory of the recipe of the cake. Then you practice making it. So you have to learn the theory of how to play tennis. Here we're discussing the theory of to work on your mind, and you practice it one step at a time and be content with your progress. That's the answer. What do you think? What you're saying is, I practiced it and I'm not very successful. That's what you're saying, isn't it? Yeah. Well, join the universe. It's called practice. That's why you have to practice something. You only have to practice something if you don't know how to do it. So
But
keep
I don't want to hurt. I don't want to hurt anybody.
We're not discussing hurting anybody. We're discussing hurting yourself right now. Deal with that first. Stop worrying about hurting other people. This is a method for stopping your own suffering. And then you can learn, because we're all in the same boat. Then you can learn on the basis of your success in yourself. You can then learn how to help others. One step at a time, pal. What do you think? Do you understand?
I understand. I agree.
Good, darling. Good. Be
Thank
happy,
you.
dear. Relax.
Thank you.
Who was next? Viviana. Where's Viviana? She's gone. Viviana's not there.
Hi, Venerable. Hi.
Hi, sweetheart. I can't see you.
Uh,
Oh, there she
my
is. I see you. Okay, Viviana, talk to me.
Okay. Is attachment linked to our identification with the emotion?
I don't understand that question, darling. Say it in a different way.
Oh. The attachment and my identification with the emotion.
What do you mean by identification with emotion? Give an example.
In one of your latest video, short video, you say or you suggest to say there is anger or no, I
I understand now. Yeah, I understand. So what we tend to do, yeah. Oh, we'll say, I am an angry person. I am a jealous person. Yes, I understand your question. So then what's your question on the basis of that?
Yes, there are some link between my identification with emotion and my attachment.
I don't quite understand the question. Okay, put it in this way. Yeah. Because we have this attachment, like I say, it's such a simple word, and Buddhism uses it all the time, as you're pointing out, attachment aversion, or over here like this twins, you know. It's got millions of facets to it. It's very primordial. It's got many aspects. And so what you could say, yes, if like in my life, I was called angry. And I was angry. As a girl, I was angry. So then Robina's angry. Then I would think, oh, I'm an angry person. So I started to think of myself as an angry person. So of course it's attachment. Then you become attached to this view. Oh, I'm an intelligent person. I'm a depressed person. Oh, I'm a fat person. I'm this. So of course it's attachment, sweetheart. We over-exaggerate that status and cling to it. Of course it is. Yes, Vivian. Definitely. Good.
Yeah, it's okay, because I try to practice your teaching in this video. So I'm sad, but there is some anger. There is
anger. Yeah, that's what Tibetans do. It's interesting. The Tibetans would say, well, there's anger. You listen to your mind. You're being very objective. You know.
Yes.
There's jealousy. There's compassion. It's a very helpful method. More relaxed.
Yes.
You know.
Yes,
it's more reasonable. Good point. Very good, Vivian. Exactly. Yeah. Anybody else? Yes.
Can you talk a little bit about, you said greet the problem?
Greet the problem, yeah.
And how do you do that?
That means the second you stub your toe, I mean, the first instinct is pain, and then the next instinct is anger or annoyance, isn't it? So then you catch yourself, and whatever method you like. So you hear that you had aversion to it. How dare that happen to me? That's aversion, that's anger. And it was like the chocolate cake. It's a perfect example, completely perfect example. The chocolate cake. The more I was expecting, because attachment also was expectation. You say, let's go have chocolate cake with me. And I get all excited. I love my chocolate cake. I'm attached to it. So I exaggerate. I'm thinking about it. I'm anticipating it. I'm going to the cafe. I'm waiting for it to come. I can't wait. All so excited. And this bloody carrot cake turns up. So the more I was hungry and emotionally, neurotically craving the chocolate cake, the more upset and angry I'll be when how dare you put carrot cake there. So you catch it. But you better catch it. Don't wait for the carrot cake to come. Catch it when I'm walking down the street with, what's your name?
Ted.
Who?
Ted.
Ted. Oh, that's right, my father's name. I'm walking down the street with Ted, and I can catch my mind being all anticipating and excited. Calm down, Robina. Relax, dear. It's not as exciting as that. So you catch it even before. So when the possibility of carrot cake comes, because you know it's possible, well, you know it's possible you could stub your toe one day. So you're noticing the hungriness to get everything lovely. When the unlovely thing happens, you're not so upset. And then when it does happen, you can shift your mind. Like he was able to shift his mind and go, well, I can handle carrot cake. You can see, you greet the stubbing. You greet the carrot cake. Do you understand?
And that comes from
Practice.
meditation.
Well, I mean, meditation is a word for seeing your mind, practicing, catching your thoughts when they pop up, noticing. Because most of the time in our culture, I think we have to, these days it's different. I mean, the second you wake up until the second you go to bed, all our attention's on the outside. So we don't even bother to pay attention to this until it comes to the surface as emotion, and then it's too late. That's the problem. So the more we have awareness, then the more you catch yourself when you stub your toe, when you catch yourself, when the carrot cake comes. Yeah. And it's not a question of being sort of a good girl or a bad boy. It's a question of just learning to find the way what makes you more capable of living your life in a reasonable way. That's just practical. Try and see it as that way. It doesn't say it that way. But it's just practical. You understand? You understand? I mean, it demands practice. And you've got to catch yourself. You've got to catch yourself, you've got to see your mind, catch it, change it. That's really cognitive. What is a cognitive therapist? I promise you, change your thoughts and you change your behavior and your life changes, That's the idea. Not to mention the long-term result, isn't it? Yeah.
In the context of social justice, for example, I'd love to hear from yourself.
I understand.
That background.
I hear it.
Things happen.
Exactly.
Some say, well, if you don't get emotional, you're just going to be at peace with it.
No, you see, that's the point. It's chucking out the baby with the bathwater, like Ted's suggesting. There is a way. This is the point. Tibetans are really good political activists. They, like in Tibet, I remember in 87 when there was like a mini uprising since the 50s. There's another one in 87. And it was all the monks and nuns up there with their demonstrating with their placards. Now, they have the view of karma. They know why this is happening. They're not freaking out. They're not having a panic attack of anger and rage, but they're seeing it is injustice. This country does not belong to the Chinese people. So they're risking their lives to get out there and shout and yell, but with full understanding of why it's happening, because they have the view of karma, and they want to try and make it right. So that doesn't mean you have to be angry and attached to do that. It sounds like if we have emotion, we assume it must be, and if you okay, we're assuming, like he's suggesting, if you give up attachment and anger, you become like a nihilistic, nothing boring person. No, you just chuck the baby out the bathwater. Love and compassion and virtue are also emotional, but they're not I-based. They're also other-based. Do you understand? That's the point. You don't become some kind of flat, flatlining person. No, not at all. No. But you care even more, and you won't give up so easily. I remember the Dalai Lama one time in a conference. No, I forget Dalai Lama. I remember that Martin Luther King said, "It's good to see problems, but then you say, what can I do to fix it?" Whereas anger on its own is just, how dare you give me carrot cake? I'm going to sue you, this, that. And meanwhile, or how dare all those evil people over there, and you spend all your time being angry and then don't bother trying to help. And that's what I remember from my years and years of political activity. What happens is you start a group, in the lefties, there's a lefty group, like the communists, like Stalin, all these people, and Mr. Marx first, then Mr. Lenin's son. Before you know, you've got Mr. Trotsky, then you've got Mr. Stalin, and they all kill each other. You forget
Sorry, I was listening to something.
What? Who's talking? Nobody.
That's our $10 and $12. Oh, yeah.
Katura, turn your
Okay.
Katura,
That's right.
mute yourself, baby.
All right.
Katura. There you go. She's muting, chatting to a friend. So, and I remember with the groups, the lefty groups, the feminist groups, you start splitting up and you all then come again internal and criticize each other and forget completely the problem. That was the joke about political activity. So political activity is just compassion, that's all, based on the wish to make the world a better place, not just on anger. Dalai Lama said, he was in an interview, and the interviewer said, well, it seems like anger is good because it gives you some energy to want to change things. He said, I know what you mean, but if it's only anger, you'll give up. Anger collapses after a while. But he said if it's based on compassion, you'll never give up. And so compassion is not, it's not meant to be so holy. Just compassion is, oh my God, look at the suffering of the world. What can I do to fix it? Then you have enthusiasm. So you don't give up emotion if you give up anger and jealousy. No. You don't give up liking chocolate cake if you give up attachment to it. In fact, you enjoy it more. That's the irony. Do you understand? You have even better sex when you're not craving it. It sounds contradictory to us. We think we have to have the craving and the fantasy to have the pleasure. No. Do you understand? It's interesting that. What else, people? 2:45. Time to finish. We can finish now, it's enough. Yeah, we can go 10.
But Swami social justice and anger can be really effective.
I know.
It gets things done.
I understand
you
that.
move it forward,
Yes.
and then you have a new result. Like
I know, but why not? Why you're just again, you see, I think you're conflating anger with enthusiasm.
But it's a dissatisfaction of the world. The world's not right.
No, but that's not attachment.
That's-
A dissatisfaction. Okay. The only way I can say it is the Buddhist approach to the mind, the way of saying it in our view, what you're suggesting. There's a good attachment and there's a neurotic one. There's good anger and there's a neurotic one. So that's a simple way of putting it. And then the good one wouldn't be totally I-based, wouldn't be frenetic and neurotic and out of control and berserk. It would be helpful and useful. Put it that way. Maybe that way. Maybe that suits your mind better.
I have a question.
Yeah.
When in terms of like trying to reduce the amount of attachment, you say like just watch your mind. So it is meditation, and you said just watch your mind. In today, like it feels like it's almost impossible to do that when there's so many things going on,
Of course.
like and things to do.
That's right. Well, exactly.
So do you have any advice in terms of, are we supposed to be following something to get that? Like,
What do you mean following something?
I don't know, it just feels a bit impossible. It sounds very, very good.
What do you mean by following something?
Like practicing a certain way to try and watch your mind.
You
Like,
mean-
is there a way?
Well, of
to-
course, I mean, okay, listen, okay. I mean, yes, of course, in the Buddhist technology, it came from these Hindus, really. There's incredibly sophisticated methods of how to work on your mind. Of course, there are there. They're techniques, they've been around for 3,000 years. Of course, it's like techniques. And so, otherwise, we're talking about how to play music. Yes, there are techniques there. Of course, there are sophisticated techniques and a very sophisticated presentation of the model of the mind and how it functions. It's all there, but that's up to decide whether you decide to want to watch it, whether you decide to work with it for this one. I mean, it doesn't mean you have to be a Buddhist to do this, but you can hear it and maybe, oh, I like that approach, and you can take it. You know? Of course, there's techniques there, and the Buddhist view of the mind is very specific. When I say attachment, anger, I'm being very specific. Of course, it's all there, and a person can take from that methodology if they want to. Do you understand? Yeah. So to keep trucking, girl, keep looking, keep checking. Do you understand?
Yeah,
Good, darling.
it's hard.
Join the universe. It's hard, but it's possible. And we're the beneficiary. It's not holy. It's not to be sort of prove you're it's not to prove you're a nice person. It's just for one's own benefit. So listen, I think we finished now. Thinking we've done this hour and a quarter, hour and a half gone, whatever it is, something gone by very quick. So all these thoughts we've had, all these seeds we've planted, nothing goes astray in the mind. So we think, okay, even if 1% makes sense, we'll try and work with it. One step at a time, working on ourselves for our sake and for the sake of others that we connect with on this planet. That's it, everybody. So you're going to offer me a cup of tea, is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay.
Please.
Have a cup of tea. I wish you could have a cup of tea with us. I'm sorry, but Viviana and Paola have to come from Italy, and Volkan has to come from Germany, and Eileen from Timbuktu, and for Pranav, where are you, Pranav? Where do you live, Pranav?
I'm in India, Venerable.
India, oh, my kids come from India. We have to ship you some cake. Okay, we're going to have cake and tea, all right? So we'll see you all next time. Okay, darlings. All right, everybody. Thank you for coming. Thank you so much, everyone. Much love.
Thank you. Enjoy your cake and
Thank you,
tea.
I really will. Thank you, darlings. Bye.
Bye.
You've been